Turn the microphones on. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. So we're actually recording here. Hello, hello, hello. Yeah. Hello, 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 hello. And so why are we not getting audio? Let's go here. Headphones. Why am I not getting any? Mute. Okay, so hearing in the headphone. Oh, right. So I'm just looking at the, see how, I had it here. Right, okay. So I just don't like stuff going to the, so I'm just going to take that down a wee bit. Yep. So, because when someone's speaking, I don't really want them to be peaking too much. So just bring those, right, so, okay. So that's go. And we now, so let's try go to here and see how long. Okay, here we got RAES Test. Right, so here we are. We're live. It says live. While we're just waiting, can I copy the URL? Copied. Email. Right to this. Compose. Yeah. Where's everybody?
Yeah, we're still there. It's only about 19 minutes, 18 minutes to 6.
Okay. Live streaming. I need to also write my friend.
Oh, so you're not cold?
No.
Oh.
Oh,
No,
you've just
customs yet.
no customs yet.
This is getting all flash.
Yeah, yep. I'm just trying to work out where is my audio.
I've got a guy who did the audio.
Oh. It's working. Working. Sorry.
Yeah, he did the audio for the B-17, the machine gun noise. And
Oh yeah, yep.
so I'm after getting those like a 5 and it loops, so it'll have audio from the deck, you know, the captain
Yep.
talking to each other. Oh, he hasn't come back to me yet.
It's the audio's coming through now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So I just have to wait until something. Just a delay. We'll get what Wally just said before in a moment.
It's me talking.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
a few minutes. That was more than 20 seconds ago.
Yeah, that's what I like. A keyboard that lights up.
Except it isn't a keyboard.
No. Chris is quite excited because next year he's doing a tour with, I think it's called the Pretenders.
Oh,
Scottish,
Yeah.
Scottish
Great.
boys and that. Yeah, so I'm really excited.
Okay.
Pretenders or the Proclaimers?
Oh, Proclaimers, yes, sorry. Proclaimers, yes.
I'm on my way.
Yeah.
I'm on my way to happiness today. Aha, aha.
Is that their famous, what's their famous one?
I will walk 100 miles
Oh, they did that. Oh,
want
he's thrilled.
to be with you.
He's done sound for every.
Hmm.
He just recently did a long tour with Solomeo.
All right.
And then back here.
Does his own way when he plays like this?
No, not at all.
No cousin. Yeah.
He part of his playing, like
Yeah.
his
Here we go.
I'm just trying to work out where is my audio.
That was a while ago.
I know. I'm going to try and the latency on that. So if I.
Sorry? It's the audio's coming through now.
I know it wasn't, but
So I just have to wait until something. Delay. We'll get what Wally just before in a moment. Normal latency.
Chris is quite excited because next year he's starting to
Pretenders or the
Yep, that's no, not want that. Just have to. My emergency audio record mode, dual encode, right, good. Let's go. Oops, so daisy. Let's check the batteries on these things. How are we going? Yep, they're going. just replace the battery on that one. I'm just going to whip out my car to grab a couple of plugs. Good, thank you. Edith? Oh, so Daisy.
Not me.
Yep.
Chips or whatever.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at Gary. He's been chomping on this for a while. We're still all
I should have finished all at once.
well, I think you're hungry. You get hungry, but in actual fact, you don't have to eat too much before you start to feel full again. Complete game.
When I got to the classroom at the end of the first week, people said, "Are you tired?" Gorges and what have you. Someone said to me one day, teaching can be quite dangerous.
I've got mics for who's the who are the who else is who have we got?
George Phillips is first, and then Melanie.
Okay, which is George?
Yeah, the front second there.
You George. I'm Gary. I'll mic you up.
Oh, thank you.
So just stay where you are.
Yep.
We'll try and there and then no, that's not gonna
Sorry? No, I haven't.
we'll just have to do it this way. Is that comfortable?
Yeah, well, we got an email from him yesterday afternoon that said he was feeling really good. I don't know. The air conditioning up here.
Hello.
Where's the driver for it?
Hey.
It's the
Yeah,
28, that's quite
I am.
isn't it?
Eeny, beeny, miny, moe. Get married by the day.
No, don't. Because it's
No,
Yeah, so
Yeah, well,
yeah, it's all right. It's good.
all right.
Yeah.
Are you just about ready to go?
Warrington line just
To get Mel.
Okay.
needed a tyre.
Yeah. I had to buy a tie the other day. They're putting a new school that down the road off Carmichael Road there.
Oh, Miller's Road.
Yeah.
Halfway. Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I left a big bolt in the road. Went straight into my tyre. I was driving home and it started to go boom, 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 boom. Oh, that's the tyre.
Yeah,
Anyway, the thing was hanging out at the time about much, must be a big bolt.
yeah. But it wouldn't have gone down and stuff like that.
No, it didn't go down at all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll open this meeting for tonight. I'd like to welcome you all along, ladies and gents. I'm deputising at the moment for David. He's away at a meeting in Wellington, and Des, who is still off with his illness. So I'm deputising tonight, so you'll have to put up with me. The agenda for tonight is we've got 4 of our members, and we've asked each of them to speak to us for 15 minutes. Some idea what got them interested in aviation and their subsequent involvement in the industry. So produce some information for us. The purpose of the session is to enable branch members to introduce themselves without the need to go to a formal presentation that can take up to an hour. So I guess it's an easy way of winding yourself into it. But if you feel enthusiastic, I'm sure we can put you down for a longer one. Okay, the speakers we've got tonight are George Phillips, Melanie Salisbury, Grayson Ottaway, Robinson. Now, I don't see Grayson anywhere, so I suspect we're going to be one shy again, unfortunately. So, without further ado, I'd like to call on George to make his presentation now.
Thanks, Mike. Well, good evening all. Sorry I haven't got any photos to show you. But, the subject is how did I get into aviation? So I guess it all started with me growing up in London when my dad used to take me to various aerodromes around the city, which was still home to World War II bombers like the Wellingtons and Lancasters. I remember walking around under these scary looking black-bellied beasts. His last station in the war was up at Finningley in Yorkshire. He worked as a fitter until the end of the war. Aircraft based there were Hamptons, Wellingtons. Now it's been changed into a regional airport called Robin Hood Doncaster Airport. I was quite unwell living in London due to the smog. Everybody had coal fires in those days, and it was just dreadful. The doctors couldn't do anything for me, so I was sent off to a boys' home on the south coast to recuperate. They had no medicine to give me whatsoever. I think I was there about a year, during which southern England had one of its coldest winters on record. And I can remember huge long ice off the gutters, and the reports of wild horses freezing to death in the nearby New Forest. One of the other things I recall to do with aviation is hearing the loud noises, which were now, I realise, were some of the first supersonic bangs generated by the experimental jets being tested in that area. After I got back to Wembley, I remember a formation of 6 Spitfires flying low over our house, which I thought was pretty special. Not long after returning home to London, my parents decided to follow Mum's siblings and immigrate to Australia in 1954. So we lived in Cronulla, which you would know that, but it's a southern suburb of Sydney, beautiful beachside suburb. So having been to school there, we often saw the Royal Australian Navy aircraft transiting up and down the coast, because they had a base on the south coast in Nowra. And in those days they had Fireflies and Gannets and the occasional Venom jet. So when we saw that, we thought it was just the bee's knees. One of my best mates gave me a copy of the book of the Observer's aircraft. This I became totally engrossed in various types of performance figures. This triggered a lifelong habit of purchasing aircraft-related magazines whenever possible, on the pocket money being available. In those days there were new types coming out. A large air show was held in Bankstown in 1963. Bankstown is similar to Wellington, it's a secondary airport for Sydney. When I went there, I saw the latest light aircraft and helicopters which were being imported from the USA. Still remember seeing what I thought was a hair-raising aerobatic displayed by a silver Mustang being flown by an ex-Air Force pilot. It just so happens that very aircraft was the one that suffered the mid-air collision a couple of years ago when I was over in Duxford, and it crashed and the bloke got out of it about 200 feet above the ground. Remember that, Mel? Yeah. Around about the same time I had my first flight, it was a Navro Anson, the old wood canvas thing. And that survives today in a museum in Tamworth on the mid-north coast. It was flown by the true legend of early aviation in Sydney, was Sid Marshall. He was a local identity and famous pre-war aviator who owned a range of wartime fighters such as the Me-109, Spitfire and Japanese types, as well as all housed in his hangar at Bankstown, a small fleet of DC-2s and other types outside. After leaving, I went to work in a bank, which was not to my liking. So I thought, oh no, throw this in, I'll go and learn to fly. So I went to fly at the Royal Aero Club of New South Wales, which I've been concerned in those days. I got my P in 66, then went on to obtain my endorsement in the same year with a night rating in 1996. During that time, I flew Victor Air Trainers, Piper Cherokees, before checking out on Piper Arrows, Cessna 172s and 182s. The 182 later became my firm favourite, especially the new ones with fuel-injected engines and some with glass cockpits and GPS. So after that, I heard there were jobs going with the government, the CAA here, the Department of Civil Aviation, and so I applied and I got selected as a flight service officer. That involved a 6-month training course in Melbourne, 3 months field training. So after the 6 months was in Melbourne, I was selected to be transferred to Papua New Guinea and arrived in Port Moresby on Christmas Day 1971. Yeah. So I was posted to train in Lae, which is on the Huon Gulf, north coast of New Guinea, where the weather is a pretty constant 30 degrees and 100% humidity day in, day out. Lae had quite a history, was occupied by the Japanese during the war and was the scene of fierce land and air battles before being retaken by Australian and US forces. And you might remember Lae also where Amelia Earhart took off from on her world trip only a few years before this and disappeared, never came back. She was searching for an island which is just a low coral atoll called Howland Island, and she didn't find it, and to this day they don't know actually where she went to. While in Lae, I joined the South Pacific Aero Club, which had a Cherokee 180, which they sometimes flew up from Moresby. They had a competition day at which was right on the end of the Gulf. Very pretty spot, and again, a scene of great battle in the war. Anyway, there's a big strip up there, and they had a flying day like they do here, and they had streamer cutting, and go up to about 4,000 feet, hoik the toilet roll out and try and cut it on the way down. So managed to win that, and it was all very exciting. I noticed the airspeed I was doing at the end of it. It's something to do with the red line, I think, I don't know. So while in Lae, I managed to get a familiarisation in the visiting RAAS for a flight over to Rabaul, which is the major settlement in New Britain, which is another to the east. Then back to Lae and up in the islands to visit Mendi, which is at about 5,000 feet, where they're much nicer. Also, lucky to score a couple of DC-3 flights from Goroka back to Lae, pretty exciting. They were still in wartime configuration with side saddle seating along the walls of the cabins. So after a few weeks in May, I was transferred onto Wewak on the north, also on the north coast of Guinea. The town was on a headland which stretches out into the sea. It is a few miles east along coconut tree lined beaches, all very scenic with beautiful warm water to swim in. This is another area that was the scene of heavy fighting, and the airport is actually built on an old Jap aerodrome. Debris from the fighting still visible with rusty tanks and guns lying in the shallows. Just up along the coast to the west there was no wartime strip, where I saw Beaufort bombers lined up neatly along the side of the strip, under the trees, still where they were when the RAF at the end of the war. Near the beach there was a P-39 Aero Cobra lying there in quite good nick. It has now been restored and is flying again, and there was a P-26 and a P-40 Kitty Hawk there too. I believe the Kitty Hawk's been rescued as well. So Wewak was good to me as it turned out, because it's where I met my lovely wife. She was working as a teacher in Wewak. She had a few more aviation moments than I did actually. On the first flight from Moresby to Wewak, they were looking in the back window of the 206 and to see a great big trail of black smoke coming out from the engine. They told the pilot, but he had no choice but to press onto Wewak in a very swampy area, no forced landing sites available. When they got onto the ground, the engine blew up and stopped immediately, so it was a pretty close call. To top that off, on another flight, a Cessna, another mission aviation Cessna, managed to fly through the top of a palm tree on takeoff, a few fronds on the way. I had a bit of excitement at the work because every now and then I'd have to do a 3 a.m. start just to talk to the cornets going over. They like to be on VHF, so we had to get up and go out and talk about one airplane. Anyway, because you can imagine, middle of nowhere, dark, no lights. So I got into the unit and that was all good. And then later, the Navy pulled this 12 crocodile out of the bomb crater. About. Rover and I were married in 1973, moved back to P last year of our posting. Then we moved back to Oz in 1974, started work in the Flight Service Centre at Sydney, where I worked on VHF and HF sectors, providing en route information to pilots regarding traffic and weather mainly. I continued to fly from various aerodromes around Sydney, main ones being Bangkok, Camden and Hogwarts Park. For a bit of variety, I also got to a landowner in Western Sydney who had his own strip on his farm. He had a Cessna 182 which he on. So nice to be able to fly without the hassles of the airport. He also had a twin Comanche and later a Cessna 340 twin. Work in the Flight Service Centre could be very, very busy at times with upwards of 25 aircraft to look after at a time. We also ran the international HF sector, which pushed out over the Tasman to 140 degrees east before Auckland was over. After a cyclone hit Darwin, they were off the air, so we assumed their airspace, which meant we were responsible for almost as far away as Singapore, as well as our normal airspace. I still remember becoming aware that Auckland was chasing New Zealand's Zulu Papaya. As we shared a common frequency, we got to what was going on. Oh, strike. This, of course, was the one that was lost on the Erebus in Antarctica in '79. Couldn't believe it at first, but sadly it was to be confirmed. In this busy airspace, there are always a few moments One that gave me the heebie-jeebies was when an Ansett Fokker doing a run out to Sydney to Broken Hill got into trouble over Western New South Wales and reported its flight controls had seized up. He started to spiral down and thought he was in he might end badly. Lucky there were other Fokkers on the frequency, and one of them said to check the gust locks. Sure enough, that was found to be the cause. Something had fouled the gust lock mechanism on the back of the pilot seat and engaged without them being aware. Just to make it more interesting, there was a design feature on the Fokkers that when they're locking, the throttle's also locked. So that would have been a few grey hair moments, I would imagine. Anyway, it all ended well. A new museum was open at Temora in Western New South Wales. It would be a very good reason for us to get together to fly ourselves out rather than to drive. In the 182 is a very trip of just more than an hour compared to 5 hours by car. So me and a few mates did that times all up. It was a great museum with flying displays of various times, starring the Spitfire, the Canberra, together with various other wartime aircraft like the Tiger Moths, Lockheed Hudson, Hinson, Cessna T-37 jet trainer, and even F-18 Hornets on occasions. We did that trip 6 times all up, and if you're interested in going and seeing the Temora Aviation Museum, there's information about the flying is on their website. Worth a trip. Highly recommended. So we shifted back to Tauranga from Sydney in 2010, mainly as a result of Rowan getting sick, as we figured we would have more family support over here if it was needed. Thankfully that hasn't turned out, and she was misdiagnosed by the neurologist in Sydney. Since moving here, I've joined the Aero Club and continue my flying with them Cessnas and Cherokees. My last flight was in April 21 when I did a BFR with the legend James Churchward. Other highlights, flew in a 1932 Trimester at Oshkosh. Got to fly the A380 Assembly at Qantas Jet Base, and a flight at Tauranga, and a flight in a Jet Provost at Bathurst for my 60th, where I was allowed some stick time, allowed to do a roll. So into my 56 years of flying, quite proud I managed not to even put a scratch on any of the planes I flew. And your friends on the way.
George, can I ask, did your health improve once you left and went to Australia?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, the very first time. No, they had medicine. But there was none available at all in London. Would you believe it? No, just what they call antihistamine. Yeah. Yeah.
George, thank you very much. So, to find out how I would be in the aviation industry, keep what they've done and
If you stand behind, I'll just put on the lectern.
Perfect timing, George. All right, so my 15 minutes is entitled How I Was Dragged Kicking and Screaming into the World of Aviation. So we moved over to New Zealand in 2004, and I started working as a travel agent for a company called Frontier Travel. Quite happily doing ordinary travel for about 5 years, and then Frontier Travel set up a new website, and they wanted all of us brokers to come up with interesting ideas to put on their website, things that other people didn't have. And so I was at home one evening saying, well, I don't know what to do, what can I put on and Kev, who you all know, my husband, said, why don't we take people back to the UK to the big air shows over there? So I think that was quite selfish on his part, actually. So I thought, well, actually, that's quite a good idea. So I did a bit of research, and nobody else was running aviation at that time. They had done previously, but at that time they hadn't for a while. So I put together an itinerary which was 2.5 weeks long, going to the places we knew in the south of England, and obviously the air shows that we'd frequented. Up until then, just the wife of an enthusiast who'd been dragged along to various museums and air shows, as you do.
You loved it.
So we put the tour out for sale and sold 13 places. The minimum, the heck will go. So off we went, did this tour. Kev assisted with me. He had the knowledge, and I'm the one with the organisational skills and people skills. And the tour was a success. I mean, we loved every minute of it, but the feedback from the guests was also quite good. So we came back home and said, well, we've got to do that again. So 12 years later, we're still going strong. And all the while people want to come with us, we will. So on that first tour, we had 3 generations. We had a child, daughter and granddaughter. He had a prosthetic leg, and so he had wheelchair assistance most of the way, and his daughter would take care of him sometimes. Kev and him hit it off, and Kev would take him off in the chair and hours talking about everything. When we came back to the airport to see him home, he was in business class, and as they wheeled him off, he'd bought so much stuff, and so had his daughter, that they literally piled with bags. I don't think he could see where they were going. They took him off, and so, yeah, he had a whale of a time. So my travel booking, and also being a mum, I think helps being a tour guide, because you just need to look after everybody. So I've got a lot of catching up to do with you guys on the aviation history front. It took me a while to been a Spitfire and a Hurricane. I think I'm there now. I love all the planning. I love finding new places to go and sharing with everybody. The stories that we create, the people we travel with become friends, and it goes on from there. So we absolutely love what we do. Go a little bit further than some tour operators, I think. On one particular tour, we went back right in our first town. One of the guys needed some cash out, so I said, all right, we'll pop into town. And then another chappie, who I'm going to call Jeremy, came up and said, could you get me some underwear while you're in town? So I was thinking, well, that's a bit more than a lot of people do, but that was his second trip, so we knew him, and that was fine. So off we went. I was determined to buy him leopard skin thongs, but I couldn't find any. I would have. Couldn't find any, so I just had to decide, because I'd said to him, well, what sort do you want? And he said, oh, anything. So anyway, I put him down for boxer shorts kind of a guy, so I gave him a pack of boxer shorts. We went back, everything was fine. Next morning at breakfast, everyone's lining up at the buffet, and I looked, I'm sure those are the undies I bought him yesterday. To him, Jeremy, is that the underwear I bought you yesterday? And he went, oh, bugger. And he had come down to breakfast in his undies and forgot to put the rest of his things on. So I'll tell you another quick story, because I think I've got time. At Big Hill Heritage Centre, we have a tour of and sit in a spit experience. They're usually flying out on a 2-seater, good for the rest of us. And they were telling us how booked up ahead they were for months, and you know, it's everybody's bucket list to get up in the Spitfire, and we're just enjoying that and watching them. And one of our chaps put his hand, I'd do it right now if I had a chance. Well, of course they couldn't. At the end of the afternoon, I managed to find time relieved him of £2,500, back out with a big grin and a flight suit on, and off he went. So it was spur of the moment up. He get to a chance to fly as well, so he had a brilliant time. And for us, watching and sharing, it's also really to be a part of that. But the funny part about that story is when he went to the hotel and tried to get his drinks and dinner that evening, they'd blocked his credit card for unusual. He couldn't get anything, so we had to bail him out for a little while till he got his credit card sorted, and he had a few words from his on the phone. So there wasn't much sympathy from the group because everyone was just really envious that he'd managed to get up and do that, but it all sorted itself out. A lot of our focus is on the historic side of aviation, but I'm really enjoying our meetings here. Every meeting we have seems really interesting. Everybody's so different and all the talkers. I'm quite interested in all the future of aviation talks we've been having. It's, you know, quite mind-blowing what's happening. So I'm quite enjoying that glimpse into the future as well. Some technological stuff goes a bit over my head, but, you know, I still enjoy it. It's still really interesting. So the kicking and screaming has gone, and like I've got the best job in the world sometimes. I really enjoy it. The last 3 years have been a challenge, obviously no travel taking place, but that did give me a chance to run a project called Poppy Flight, which some of you might know about, and that was a relay of pilots flying between towns, about 30 pilots, everywhere to a giant poppy and star, all country, right top to bottom, collecting the RSA Starship Foundation and also warbirds. So in those challenging times, in 2020, ran in 2021, we raised $17,000. So I think that was quite good considering all the events had to be kept small and the main fundraiser, Classic Fighters, cancelled, kind of had to just wing it and hop over. But organising something, it took over my life for quite a long time. It was huge, but it all worked. It was brilliant. So we gave about $8,000 to the RSA, $6,500 to Star, $2,500 to warbirds. So next year we should be back to normal. We've got 2 tours lined up for next year. We've got Avalon a week over there, and the Spitfire Trail, which is long awaited because that's been times. In the meantime, I've been working full-time with another job. I had to have an income of some sort. So hoping that next year I can ditch the other job and get back to doing what I love and I know Kev loves as well. So that's my involvement.
When you flew to Slipper Island.
Tell you about it. It was been over here and we wanted to be involved in the aviation scene here. So we called up the Warbirds guys, joined, and went up to a fly-in up in Fungary, I think it was. Was it Fungary? I'm sure it was. And we were a little bit lost, I think. The Warbirds guys were amazing, but you know they're all there with their planes and in their hangars, and we were kind of a little bit we're a bit new, and you know we're not really into this scene, but everybody was so brilliant. And on the Sunday morning, we had barbecues and stuff, and on the Sunday morning everybody just went, oh, let's go to Slipper Island and lunch, you know, very casually. And we just kind of popped back to say goodbye, actually, and thank you for having us. And they said, oh, come. So flying in this Beaver, I think the Beaver was on the way over, was it? Okay, what do we do in something? His hair turned just with the landing onto the island down the hill on the grass runway. Way back we were in the Beaver. That was hairy enough, but we haven't really flown much in the little planes, really not, you know, like you guys up in there all the time. And I was in the back thinking, oh no, I haven't got a wall, what about the kids? Because I thought I was going to die. And where's there's the sick bag. I was thinking I cannot show myself up throwing up in the back of this plane. So it was quite an adventure for us.
They're going to land down there and still that
They-
speck of dust.
I think they were winding us up as well, because the pilots, you know, one of them was going, you have a go, and we were heading for the hills, and you know, you probably all know, the wind takes you up, the updraft or whatever it is, when we're getting closer and closer, and we were thinking we're going to hit that hill. And I think they were just winding us up, but it was really good, and a nice introduction to those guys as well, and we've sort of kept that, the continuity there, getting to know those guys. Yeah, I've got thousands of stories about on tour, some of which are yeah.
Mel, we take these groups around the UK to various air shows, like you've just explained things, and you've got say 14 people. Some of the air shows I've been to over there, if you go up that wrong time, it's quite a kick to get in. I'm paying money.
Not when you've got a gold
pass.
Yeah, get a gold pass. Yeah. No, we've never had really any trouble. It's sometimes the traffic getting in and out's a bit difficult, but actually once you're in there, there's never been no problems getting in at all. Yeah, yeah. And then you go straight through to
Do you have one of those orange things you walk people for?
One year I had something made, but we've learned over the years the easiest thing is to get the same colour shirt. I mean, often you get a tour anyway on tours, but if you've got a bright red t-shirt, then everybody just follows the red, and that works better than any of those things. So that's ordered, and everyone knows who to follow. And it's only a problem through the airports, actually. Yeah. Everywhere else we go, it's quite easy, and people are good and keep on time. And if they don't, the group let them know. So I don't have
a lot of repeat customers.
Yeah, yeah, we do.
Some you're happy to see, so
some will come just because it's a good pub crawl. And well, actually, you've been to half of these places already, like Bob. You say, "Are you coming again?" You've been to half of these places. No, it's just a good pub crawl. It's jolly expensive pub crawl, but yeah, and the company, you know, the camaraderie, and it's just such good fun. But yeah, people can do that on their own, but it's way more fun.
Just thinking about the dollar-pound situation, you know, you must lie awake some nights worrying about hanging things together in terms of exchange rate. For example, I mean, if Liz Truss came back tomorrow and the pound dived to all-time lows.
1 year. Ideally, you'd lock in your currency.
Right.
Then we've never had that chunk of money to be able really to do that. And there's always a bit of uncertainty. Will you get the numbers and will the tour run? So we've not had that luxury. Only 1 year did we get caught out, and we did lose almost all the bit on the tour, and that was overnight. The exchange rate just went boom in the wrong direction, and yeah, I could see daily. I could see that profit going, and I was trying to pay people as quick as I could, and yeah, that was so lucky. Over 12 years, it's only happened once. Yeah, it only happened once. But what do? You've got to go anyway. Yeah. If you get less than minimum numbers, you've got to just go. And we pay for Kev's flights, mine's included in the costs, obviously. If we're less than minimum numbers, we just think we're going home anyway, so if we don't make any money, let's just go. And it makes up for it, so it swings and rounds. Anyway, question taking me my time, so go if no one else has anything else to ask. Good. Yep. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mel. That was very interesting. I've been on some tours myself, and I know what it's like. You get a group of people, and there's always the odd grumpy one or two, but the rest of them are usually quite a lot of fun, and you can usually have a really good time. There's always some know-it-all who knows it all and actually doesn't know anything, but it's one of the things that you've got to put up with. All right, thank you very much, Mel. Very interesting. Now, Grayson was supposed to be next up, and he's supposed to be on him, but we haven't seen him as yet. So I wonder if Edith, would you like to come and talk next? All right, thank you.
Well, let's talk about the reason being is that's the microphone.
Oh, okay.
So try and stay behind the lectern or reason my class.
I put on all my...
Oh,
I
well,
got
okay.
to see. Well, the last time I came to a talk, oh damn, I forgot to. Do they have drinks of water? Oh, yeah.
This one there beside me.
Is there? This one? No one else has had a sip.
Yeah, I've had mine. So.
Oh, thanks. I was having a practice this afternoon. I meant to stop and get some lozenges on the way because I lost mine. Well, in aviation, it's always, well, I don't know. I'll start. Aviation, my part in it. I've done nothing auspicious or have any claim to fame. I've just loved being involved in talking aviation. This is how it started. My father had one of the first a lot of top dressing on our farm in 1950 at Pongakawa. I remember climbing on the loader boom so I could see inside the Tiger Moth. He learnt to fly at Tauranga Aero Club in 1949-50s. I remember names like Ron Graham and Wally Bell growing up. I have a photo of my twin brother and myself standing beside, and I've just found out it's a wacko, at Tauranga Aero Club. I've got a twin brother. Nothing much happened after that until I started training at Rotorua Hospital in 1962. And I used to hitchhike back and forwards from home to the hospital. It was great. One day in with an ex-World War II pilot. He said, come out to the Aero Club on Saturday morning and he was flying in a Tiger Moth. No way was I to go fly in a Tiger with some stray pilot. Come Saturday morning, I had a notice up on the notice board. Any nurses want to come out to the Aero Club and go flying. And one nurse responded. So come Saturday morning, I took her out to the Aero Club, which was in Fenton Street then. That was the airport, one big paddock, which way the wind was blowing, always landed into wind. And it was arranged that we could fly to Tauranga in a Cherokee with two other guys. Back at the Aero Club that night, we were fated with flattering attention and encouraging out more nurses next Saturday night. Very naive I was. However, we were both encouraged to fly, and two instructors, unknown to us at the time, had a competition to see who could go solo first. I was in a Piper Cub, Bravo Tango Yankee, and my friend Betty was in a Moraine Saulnier Rally, Charlie Sierra. She went solo first, and myself the next morning in 4.5 hours. It wasn't until then we found out that we'd been the object of their competition. The instructor was Ian Palmer, and he was really miffed that the bungee on the tail wheel of the Cub had broken the day before when I should have been first solo, the winning instructor. So time passed. Many years later, in 19, Ian was a Royal Flying Doctor pilot in Cairns, Queensland, and when visiting my daughter and new grandson in Townsville, we reconnected and I was invited to spend 3 days flying with him in a King Air Queensland call. Excuse me. One of my many so lucky experiences in aviation. The next year of my student pilot training was not really conventional as I know now, but somehow I made it to PPL in May '64. And Clary Berry, the testing officer, took me for my in the Cub. How I hated the spinning. It took so much courage to stall and spin so I could recover. I never enjoyed it ever, which is a shame, as they say that it's really when one learns to have full control. That there's not so many here tonight. My mother was my first passenger. It was pretty game of her, as my father had enjoyed scaring her in the Tiger Moth years earlier, but she was so proud to have a novelty pilot daughter. I can remember, I didn't write this in here, but remember that's when I passed sitting state. I can remember the senior tutor telling me when an interviewed, she said, "Nurse, if you'd really studied hard, you could have got honours in your nursing." She knew I wasn't going to get it, but I tell you, I knew that fennec backwards. Once I was a private pilot, once one was a private pilot, we were allowed to convert to the Piper Cherokee. I clocked up quite a few hours taking friends and family around the Rotorua Lakes instead of studying nursing. Ina Monk was a glider pilot then and joined the fledgling New Zealand Airwomen's Association. Then I passed my nursing state finals, married and had 4 children. My flying license. Lucky me, 23, and I sat the CAA exams, and Brian Cox passed fit to be a PPL again. He was a great mentor to women pilots and encouraged many to be competent aviators. In those days, a career in aviation other than being a flying instructor wasn't an option for women pilots. As you know, it wasn't 1980 that any women were allowed into Air New Zealand. The odd one became a top-dressing pilot for a short while, but mostly they were instructors. In the 80s, both my daughters went on and aviating. I met some of my special flying friends, including Judy Costello, Ann Casson and a young Liz Needham. They were all instructors. I must say they kept me on the straight and narrow over the years if I was getting out of line. In 1973, I flew from Ardmore to Wanganui with 3 other girls to my first Airwomen's Rally. It was so much fun and amazing to be in the company of all these other flying girls that I've only missed one rally in 50 years. The last one was a few weeks ago in Hāora. Flying to the Queen's birthday weekend rallies to a different airfield each year in New Zealand always produced a learning curve for me, and later I may tell you that just depends if Grayson comes nice and early. In 1983, I was so fortunate again to be the proud owner of a Cherokee 180 Delta India Sierra. DIS and I flew just about everywhere in New Zealand, from Great Barrier Island to Stewart Island and many airfields in between. It had 2-axis autopilot and was nearly full IFR. I went to classes and learned about VOR. In fact, I really learned about flying, owning DIS. It had only one bad habit. It was to beat flying across Cook Strait. In 1999, my husband passed away, which was a difficult time, and I thought my flying days were over. Oh, geez, where did I go to? Then in 2002, I met Liz Needham again at the mailboxes in Drury. She encouraged me to join the Warbirds Association in Ardmore, which I did, and was overwhelmed at the amazing variety of aviation people, and most were very friendly and welcoming. Quite daunting when one middle-aged woman of no special significance. it wasn't long before someone learned I was a PPL, and I went on to a share in 4 Delta Golf Yankee, which I knew was beyond my. But Dave brought patient and encouraged, showing me something that I went to follow in DGY in April 2003. Exactly 4.
God,
Oh,
you're a bloody
anything. 20 years and second for most of. Another highlight, I'm talking too fast. Another highlight was meeting Jean Batten several times. Becoming and I Derek's acquiring it. Guns flying. I'll wait till he's. Grace.
The drama still.
Noise.
Cut it off, so it's.
No, but that door's hotter than that thing.
I just told you right, so it's
Yes, I
suddenly.
am. That's better. Where's your shoes?
Here.
Oh, right. Taking my grandson's CT4, right, I've got 11, I'm not quite all of them to go. One later joined the Air Force and learnt to fly in the Texan. There was other highlights, having a share in the Yak 52 here at Tauranga. I didn't quite get low, but that wasn't my fault. Instructors, the Yak broke down. I decided that I'd stick to doing best what I knew, and that was flying the C4. But the Yak was a great experience. As I've lots of other things I could mention, but as I've said at the beginning, I have no claim to fame in aviation, but I've had a ball along the way, and I've been so lucky to meet so many awesome and wonderful people, and have had the privilege of enjoying their company, listening and learning. Shall I stop now?
No, go on if you want to. Right, carry on.
Tell us a story, come on.
Derek's saying yes. I won't tell any stories about Derek, but this.
Tell the story, I'll butt in right here. Well, not personally why he.
No, I'm not.
The last load I was taking out, I took Edith with me. I come back, thought my loader driver was in the back coming, I got to why Edith the control said, hey, you better go back for your loader driver. She was the cause of me needing my loader driver dollars.
It was all my fault. Yeah. The loader driver was, because I was in the front with Derek, the loader driver was supposed to get in the back. And it was the last flight of the day, it was getting dark. And it didn't have the night rating and the Fletchers, so we wanted to be home. We goes up the street, waits for the loader to drive in. Derek yells out, "You're right there, Aaron." And he hears the voice say something. This was actually talking to the farmer. But Derek, that was enough for him. He gave it the gun and off he went. Poor Aaron. Before the tail wheel. It would have been awful if we'd landed. Lucky Aaron had the controllers fine. It would have been awful if we'd landed in Tauranga and Aaron wasn't in the back and the door was still. When do we have to? I want to tell you this little story because it actually, I learnt a lot from it, and it was in the year. It was in a year that that was to become history in New Zealand aviation in June 1979. Is it okay to tell them?
Yep.
I mean, I don't want to take up
No,
Tracy's
darling, you
space.
go. I love this story.
Have you heard it?
I've heard this.
You?
It's gorgeous. Please tell it.
I'm going to leave out some bits.
Probably the big bit I'm referring to. All right, go.
It was June 1979. It was the year of Carless Day, and it was the Airwomen's Rally, and it was going to be held in Bridge Park. And we read in the aviation news that year that Bridge Park, instead of being a great big grass airfield, had a brand new tar sealed strip on it, and it was quite the news. So when we took off from Ardmore, well, there was going to be no flying competitions, so we had a guest speaker, and the guest speaker was going to be Ron Chippendale. It's funny how all these little holes all come into one thing at the end. So we got a ride with a commercial pilot from Ardmore, Judy, my friend, and I, and she was the president of the Airwomen's and I was the secretary. And I'm in the back with the wife of the pilot. And we take off and we go IFR, and we come out at Napier, and it's getting late, like round about nearly 5 o'clock. And we come out at 5,000 feet. And so now he says, which way, where's the Bridge Park? And we point that way. And he turns and off we go. And he said, if we don't find it in time, we're coming back here and we're going to get a taxi out to Hastings. So off we went, and all we had to do was a nice tar seal strip. Yep, which we did. Oh, there it is. We found wind, and the pilot calls up. Little did we know that, well, the pilot calls up downwind on such and such a vector. And he said, well, first of all, we had to find the windsock. Yes, I could see the windsock. I was in the seat racing. And
it's a good story.
Anyway, so we fly downwind. We weren't on the vector, the reciprocal piloted course we were on, but nevertheless, we fly downwind and we turn and we come in, and we're now on final and everything's good. I'm leaving out now, and then we land on the strip, and as we land, these rows of wires. Actually, while we were flying down, I looked out and I thought, funny, I can't see any other aeroplanes. There's no hangars. Never mind. It's a sealed strip and there's a windsock. So I saw what I wanted to see. The pressure was getting late, the time pressure. So then we land and see the wires, and it was. But as we were pulling out, I look out and I think, oh, how entrepreneurial. Here's all these signs running past. One says, drink leopard beer, and another says, smoke Peter Stuyvesant. And I thought, that was really entrepreneurial. Then the next one said, welcome to Thunder Park Drag Strip. Cringe. Meanwhile, back in the jungle at Bridge Park, they were all waiting for the president and secretary to arrive. And they'd heard on the radio that we were on final, and they're looking out, but they can't. Then they say, oh, you don't think, oh no, surely not. Because that morning, another lady pilot, a friend, Ina Monk it was, she said my face was as red as my lipstick, because she'd landed her Cherokee there that morning. Wow. Well, as we got out, as we turned round to backtrack, this van come whizzing, and the man was very irate. You're the second one today. Which par's over there? So we backtracked, counted the sets of wires, and took off. And the word was, Mum's the word, but too late. everyone had guessed by now, we're the president and the secretary. But we weren't the pilots, so. Yeah. So, reading. So, Ron Chippendale was a guest speaker, and later that year he was to become famous with Erebus. And they'd already had the Friendship crash in the harbour earlier that same year. So it wasn't a very good year for aviation. But I did learn don't fly under time pressure and see what was there and not what I wanted to see, and always make sure I'm flying the reciprocal downwind to what I said to the landing strip, to what you call up and say. No, that's it's not a story I'm proud of, but we got away with it.
Flying it though, that's the main thing.
You were the fastest car of the day on the track.
Oh, that's it.
I have to press the...
All right, thank you very much.
You going to talk next, or you?
I can. I was just trying to... How do you open that? Oh, you pull it to you silly shit.
Yes. As you can guess, Grayson is here. And of course he arrives and then immediately passes off. All right, thank you, Edith. That was really great. And you've obviously had a lot of adventures in your life, so great time.
Thank you, Mike. Nice to see you.
Yes.
Everything good?
Have one of them.
I'll have one of those.
All right. Grayson's going to talk to us.
I'm Grayson Ottaway. I've had this big monstrous voice since a month before my 13th birthday. My voice has always been my best friend. It today makes me a stupid amount of money voicing TV ads and narrations and all sorts of other things, and will make me more as the voice gets older and I get older and it gets bigger and better. I was watching Ready to Roll. Do you remember that TV show, the top 20 songs between 6 and 5:30 on a Saturday night? It was one of the most watched TV shows in New Zealand. I don't know why they ever dumped it. Mum called out from the kitchen, "Now that's finished, can you come and help me with the dishes?" "Oh, Mum, I don't want to help." She goes, "Oh, your voice is broken." From then on, I believe Carl can't come to school today because he's got a sore throat, to ring the school office for all my mates. I ended up having an incredible 28-year radio career as a result of that night in 1984. Though I never wanted to be on the radio, it wasn't in my plans. My Brisbane Airport, and from about years old, I spent every waking moment there. I started learning to fly in summer of 1985 on a joyride with local pilots. And you probably remember the airline Air Central that had the Mitsubishi MU2s that operated 81 to 83, I think, then got made part of Eagle Airways and ended up getting dumped. My goal was to fly what I wanted to do with my life. The first plane that I ever took the control as a 14-year-old was a 1966 M20 ZK Charlie Papa Foxtrot that was owned by a dear fellow who we sadly lost about 18 months ago, Granville Jones. It had the infamous Johnson bar, onto YouTube and look, Johnson bar gear lever to retract the gear. So you had your left hand on the yoke, the right hand on the throttle, and with your spare hand you grab the bar, push the release latch with your thumb to unlatch it because there was a metal collar on top of the lever, pulled on the lever, dropped it towards the floor, the hands around. 85, it was hard at night, didn't even bother. The lever came down, you had to flip your hand to secure it to the unlock latch, which was on the floor. So gear down was up under the instrument panel, gear up was down on the floor between you. Before I was a left-seater in the Mooney, retracting the gear was one of my jobs when I was passengering with Granville, also extending it. As a plane-loving kid, I just thought I was the greatest fellow on the face of the planet. Gear lever, you pushed down on the lever which released it from the latch, handle forward, you let it come up by spring pressure, jiggling your hand around, pushed it towards the instrument panel, and about 10 centimetres away, you felt like a spring tension which you pushed through. You kept pushing, and then once it was fully forward, you allowed the metal sleeve, if you will, to push up, which locked the gear down. Here was the trap. If the green down light actually came when you reached that, but it wasn't actually fully latched. You had to, and even if you pull the throttle to idle, you wouldn't get anything. If you ever landed the lever with the lever not fully latched under the instrument panel, it would simply collapse, a very noisy landing, and a call to the insurance company. I got a very huge lesson that I've kept, and I've been flying since 1985, 6 something. I got a very huge lesson from Granville about retractable single-engined aeroplanes. I would have been 15, I think it was summer of 86. I picked Charlie Papa Foxtrot off the on Gisborne's, which heads towards the showgrounds and heads towards the racetrack. All go bang, pulled the gear up nice and quick when Granville failed the engine. And he looked at me and goes, "Now what? You're about to spread it across the runway." And I went, lesson. In a retractable single engine, E1, positive rate of climb, no runway on which I can touch down should I have to, gear up. And it's amazing the number of airline pilots that I've actually told that to, because they in an airplane positive rate gear up. Aerodynamics played a very big part in dropping the gear as well. The gear maximum speed was 104 knots, which was very easy at that speed. The funny thing was, as the speed decreased, the harder it became to reduce, to actually, extend the gear. From the Mooney, I flew 40 Charlie India Victor. He actually only sold to a Gisborne syndicate a couple of years ago. CIV went online in Omaka with the Marlborough Aero Club in November of 1965, and then in February went to Gisborne with the Gisborne Flying School, then the Gisborne Aero Club, and then Roger bought it in January of 1973. From the Cherokee, went a couple of hangers down to Air Gisborne, Margaret and John Reed, who I knew very, very well because Andrew, the youngest son, and I were great schoolmates. We still are. I flew their Grumman AA5 Traveller, which was a very unique four-seat aeroplane. Had a caster-ring nose gear, but the funny thing was about it, and I love this on a hot summer's day in Gisborne, you could actually pull the canopy back about that far and fly like a convertible. It was a brilliant aeroplane. John Reed is still, I believe, fish spotting in his aeroplane, Juliet Air. I flew for him a number of times to build ours. It's quite the thing to be 150 nautical miles offshore in a single-engined aeroplane. Yes, you're wearing a life jacket and there's a raft in the back, but you find yourself very tuned into the engine. Something changes, any odd sound, and there's a large pucker factor. This was about the time that Granville bought Delta Golf, which was a gorgeous flat windscreen 1968 Beach V35 Bonanza, which Mike remembers. It was a gorgeous colour, it was maroon and gold, it's had a repaint since, amazing aeroplane. It had the throw-over yoke, which was central, pilot, and then co-pilot. So when I flew it, as I did many times, Granville had no control on his, he was completely reliant on me. She had 285 horsepower and was ridiculously fast, being a retractable single with the old V-tail. One day we left a few minutes after the Banderanti that was going to Auckland. We also were going to Auckland. This was back in the days when you could actually take a light aeroplane into Auckland. Now the Bandit cruised at 165 knots and the flight to Auckland took about an hour and 7 minutes, give or take. We landed in Auckland 12 minutes ahead of him. The Bonanza was an incredible aeroplane. I ended up getting my PPL and then radio brought me to Tauranga in November of 1995, where I caught up with Bayflight owner and chief pilot Phil Hooker, who still ran the airport, who I'd met, the new first officer with Eagle Airways. One summer's evening, I was watching the Airways Corporation short body MU2 that they used for a couple of years that was doing a check on the PAPI and the NDB, and saw me. I ended up with him a couple of years later. I got my multi-engine instrument rating in Delta Charlie Lima, the Seneca, that was actually part of Gisborne's fleet when I was a kid, which was quite something considering that I horrifically dislike flying in crap weather. I hate it, but I got the multi-engine instrument rating. Then I went on and did some airline transport pilot licenses, the ATPL exams, except meteorology. When I want to go flying, if I come to the hangar and look and the sky's not blue, I'm not going flying. Plane-loving 16-year-old career in aviation, I got a job working for Eagle Airways on the ground as a customer service agent in Gisborne. Air New Zealand bought 50% of Eagle actually the year I left in 1990. And then, of course, ceased operations completely in August of 2016. I started at Eagle a month after they'd pulled the Friendships off the Gisborne-Auckland route, replacing them with the 18-seat unpressurised Embraer Banderantes. The Bandit was an incredible machine that Eagle Air founder Malcolm Campbell had researched and found to be the perfect plane for the routes that Eagle was flying in the early 1980s. He bought ERU, which was the first one, Echo the country in May, just a couple of months. Now the thing about the Bandit compared to the Friendship was there was no Hostie, no warm OJ, and sort of open cheese and crackers. Do you remember those on the Friendships? Boy, there was some press about that. And I, of course, was the Bandit. If only we'd had the Beech 1900Ds back in the late 1980s. And of course, New Zealand has been served by piston engine planes, all sorts, Chieftains, Cessna 402s. Malcolm's decision to buy ERU saw Air Albatross and Nelson buy the Flying Pencil, the Metroliner. It was nicer for passengers as it was pressurised, but the cabin was only 4'6", so you really had to crawl down it in order to get to your seat. And really, in the early 1980s, New Zealand Airlines, commuter airlines, started burning GA1. This was at a time when Air New Zealand was bailing out of a number of flights into a lot of airports or reducing the flights. And as I mentioned, Air New Zealand actually ended up buying Eagle Air and Air Nelson in 1995, so they became part of Air New Zealand. And if memory serves, in December of 2020, Air Nelson as an airline and Mount Cook Airlines as an airline ceased to exist, and they got merged into the Air New Zealand Air Operator Certificate, so they actually don't exist anymore, which is a real shame. I got some incredible learning with how to deal with people as a result of my 3.5 years working for Eagle as a teenager. Experiences that aided me a hang of a lot through my radio career, and something in the last couple of years I get paid to give advice to people and to companies on. In January of 1989, I did a boarding call for a flight to Auckland. Ladies and gentlemen, Eagle Airways announced the departure of Flight 576 to Auckland. Passengers with boarding passes, please board your aircraft now through Gate 2. The breakfast announcer of the new FM station in town was on the flight. He was from the famous Auckland's 89 FM and had come to Gisborne to get started. I recognised his name because it had a bit of press and it was the new station. The thing I realised was it made stereo the red light blink instead of 2ZG, the AM radio station, of course. He came back to the check-in counter after the boarding call, introduced himself and told me that I had an incredible voice and had I ever thought of getting into radio. They were looking for staff. Now, I went to primary school with the daughter of the 9 to noon announcer on 2ZG. Carrie and I were the best mates and spent a whole lot of time together. But as we got older, her a girl, me a boy, we stopped spending so much time together. I chatted to her on Facebook Messenger about a year ago. I told Dave Grove I was all set for an aviation career. He told me he'd really like to talk to me, handed me his business card and told me to call him, which I didn't. So I had my PPL, I was a massive flying nerd, all ready to go, all set for a job, had kind of a scholarship with Air New Zealand, let's go. A great mate of mine was dating a girl who worked at 89 FM. I ended up at a radio station party one Saturday night about 3 months later, and Dave obviously was there. He recognised me and kept on at me all night. You've got to come and have a look, come and have a look, come and have a look, which I did. And I was hooked. I was so hooked. A month later, I was on air, went through the different shows, and off I went. And as I said, had an incredible 28-year radio career. Now, I kept in touch with pilots from my 10 years that I'd met at Eagle and other pilots who were all advancing their careers, kept around flying. Moved to top with hooks, built my own abilities flying goes. Aviation even stretched into my quiet time. I've been an online flight simulator pilot and air traffic controller since they first started it back in 1985. Flight sim and ATC was my escape from my crazy mad radio career. As Mike knows, I have a mailing list of flyers to whom I send Today in Flying History emails to regularly. Via flying friends with Air New Zealand courses and flying the Simmons fleet, my general love of planes and my good technical knowledge means that I get called on from Adrian Schofield from Aviation Week, the world's oldest aviation publication, for help on technical matters. And for the 7 years have been writing about aeroplanes and airlines, even won a couple of awards. So that's me. I have often wondered what my life would have been like if I'd stayed working for Eagle, then gone on to be part of Air New Zealand. I might be CEO now, who knows? Or if I'd become a pilot. I am, though, very, very happy the way my life went. I was a lucky boy in my radio career to interview some of the biggest stars on earth, and I did some bogglingly incredible things. I met my wife because of radio, and I live in the greatest city on earth because of radio. A big international media magazine a bunch of years ago had a very apt description of the way that my life had gone, and it's a good way to end my little life story. My radio career had Grayson flying a very different kind of airwave. Thank you so much.
Has anybody got
Questions?
That's what we were afraid of.
Things, because I know a lot of people at all different levels, so I know some 7200s, shorter ones. They owned 4 and they leased 4. Ones went. The 4 owned ones set up in Victorville. They've all been bought by an airline, from what I've heard, that contracts to Amazon. Prime Air, you've heard of them. So they're not going to put a cargo door in it, they're going to keep the passenger doors, and it's going to be a package freighter. Because Air New Zealand, I know a lot of you have had a lot to do with it over the years, absolutely babied those aeroplanes. Engines are some of the triple. Of the 300 is going back, Oscar Kilo Oscar is going back to the Japanese lessor. We got 2-1 in, if you will, the domestic seating a couple of days ago. OY, B, C, D and E are all here before next February. So basically Air New Zealand is going to end up running the A321 Neo, which is better than the 320, up and down the main trunk. And they bought, I think very brightly, the flexible cabin, which gives them the ability to put 244 seats in a 321 Neo. Now, to put that in some perspective for you, the 767-300 that Air New Zealand had 235. Burns about half of the 767, so it's huge. It's all about making money. Air New Zealand popped out with a very interesting media exclusive, if you will, release. I was asked this question. 0.6% of the CO2 emissions in the world. It's nothing. But all these airlines around the world are saying, oh, we're going to need to stop flying and bloody blah. I got a mate who's a captain with American Eagle on the Embraer, the 175-190, and he sent me a message, part of a company email last weekend, and it sounds like the domestic regional jets in America are going to stop flying. Simply because there's a long-running, they have what's called a scope clause, which limits the size of the aeroplanes that the pilots can fly. It's nutty. So that's why they fly the 175 Embraer jet, because it's 75 seats, and the 190, which is 90. The Airbus A220, which was that Bombardier jet that they created, can be 110, amazing aeroplane. Qantas has just bought a whole bunch of those to replace their 717s and their old Fokker jets. But it sounds like America's about to get, so these small towns that have jet services once or twice a day or whatever are about to lose them because they're within Kui driving distance of an airport. I mean, the world of aviation in the time that I've been pootling around with it has changed horrifically. Mike saw it the other day, because I know you sent it on to John Pheasant, who was very pleased to get it. October 26, 1931 was the first flight of the original DH-82 Tiger Moth with a 120 horse engine that then became the DH-82A with a 130 horse engine. So that's 91 years ago. John Pheasant, who has the Jack crew here, and of course the long guy, I glory all the time. John said, 80. Not a guy that regrets things. I've had a crazy, amazing life. Package to fly up to the Farnborough Airshow. Now, the package deal included a subsonic flight on Concorde with the return via Kaitac, and when we're in England, seeing Freddie Mercury and Queen in concert. 3 things I always wanted to do: fly on Concorde, see Freddie Mercury and Queen, and land at Kaitac. I was on the radio when in 1991 Freddie died, so that was that done. Kaitac got closed down in 1996, if I remember, and then Concorde went out of the sky in 2003. Missed on the 3 things that I'd always wanted to do, which is that. And the anniversary of the last Concorde flights, they had the 3 British Airways flights coming from wherever, landing in Heathrow one after one another, and the BBC covered it. It was a massive day. But, I mean, aviation stalled the day that Concorde got taken out of the sky. It stalled. And the fact is now your 787s, your Airbus A350s, 380s, everything, blasting through the sky at sort of Mach 8, 4, 8, 5. We're not going any faster today than the 707s were going 40 years ago. What the hell's coming for aviation? I think, sadly, the hippie greenies are going to cause airlines to look at, do we need to be operating these jets to these small towns, so they'll stop flying them, as I mentioned. And the grim reality is there will be some huge... What's that? I think that is it's a great wheelie. Geez, that's gone for an age. I think there's sadly going to be a large amount of aviation that's impacted because of the hippie world that for some reason we've walked into. I read a very interesting story the other day. I used to be a massive news hound. I've given up simply because it fills my brain full of crap. I had a brain fart 2.5 years ago, and this is why I was meant to do this in April, but I've in and out of hospital. Tauranga Hospital has the worst food on the planet. My wife keeps bringing me dinners because it's just crap. Anyway, the good news is I've reached the end of the year, brain's been fixed, chemo and a bit of surgery, let's carry on. If I was flying, I wouldn't be able to fly with that, anyway, but that's a good thing. But I mean, I think the sad, grim reality is going to be that aviation's absolutely going to change as we go down the path.
What are your thoughts on autonomous aircraft we have in here in 2025?
Honestly, I was meant to have gone to Oshkosh 2 years ago, but couldn't. I got my driver's take off me, my pilot's license take off me a couple of years ago because above 1,500 feet, the oxygen starts to decrease until you get to 14,000, and then above that, you're on Everest and good luck. So the neurosurgeon said, don't go flying. And I said, well, we go for a $150 cup of coffee in Papua Nui, we go up 500 feet. What's the... He goes, look, you'll be a beam whangamata and you'll suddenly go poop and they've got to get you to an ambulance in 9 minutes. And I went, okay, let's not do that. So what happens was, if you get up in altitude, the oxygen depletes, so the blood takes over, you end up with a huge amount of blood in your head, the brain tries to get down your spine, across your spine cortex, you have a respiratory, then cardiac arrest, and that's it, you're done. So I wasn't, because I was going to, and this has been the most annoying thing. I mean, I'm a showman, but it's the most annoying thing in the last couple of years is walking my wife to Bayfair, next minute, wake up 2 days later in the hospital and go, hello, why am I? You died. Okay. But the good news is all fixed. So I had to Doc Jim on Tuesday. I had a big MRI on Monday. Everything looks superb. He said, I'll give you your license back for summer. And the other problem is I drink, but I haven't been able to drink anything. And I said, good. First thing I'm going to do is go to 1,500 feet in an aeroplane, do a couple of circuits around the airport, land and have a massive rum and coke. And he laughed and he goes, okay. But what stiff. And I said, well, you've told me I'm fine. And he goes, yeah. I went, you just... honestly, I watched because I'm a massive aviation nerd, I watched all the Oshkosh videos, and I saw that black thing with the 20 props, and you sort of sit at a crazy angle, fly, and I just sort of thought, who the hell wants to be leaning back on an upside down angle fly? I mean, incredible technology. But look, let's be honest about it. We have enough problems driving a damn car at 50 or 70 or 100 round. How the hell are we even going to get on an aeroplane that flies itself? We can't, and of course, what happens if something goes poopy and it loses the Wi-Fi connection? Then you're going to have to take over? Oh, good luck with that. Yes, sir.
Just this week, Ford, Volkswagen and a major US player have walked away from autonomous vehicles.
Really? I must have missed that. As I said, I used to watch news, but I just can't because I've got more important things to put in my brain. It really, isn't that interesting? But because Tesla's autopilot, you can buy it with the autopilot, but apparently you have to keep your both hands on the wheel and your foot on the footrest, and if you don't, it doesn't autopilot anymore. So, and it's because of laws, but other things. But I didn't realise that. That's interesting. Oh my gosh.
Tesla also being sued for millions by families.
Oh well.
Loved ones got incinerated by an automatic car.
Well, look at. I love Top Gear, and I've interviewed Richard. I've interviewed Richard and James and Jeremy. I get their once a year Twitter message from Jeremy. Incredible guy. Just such a neat trio. But anyway, the thing was when Richard had that crash in that Norwegian, I think it was, that Rimac car and down the hill, and they pulled him out and busted leg and a bit beat up, and it just kept blowing up, and they put it in a tank of water, like a drum of a big thing, and it still kept putting into flames 5 days later, because the Rimac's got 12,000 of those little 18650 batteries, so little cells. So yeah, thermal runaway. Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you so very much. Love you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Grayson. Be entertaining.
Just one thing to add. I've never landed on a drag strip. Although I'll tell you one night when I was doing my multi-engine instrument rating, I bloody nearly landed on Louis Road because the lights got me. It was 700 visibility. And I got out and I think that's it. And David, who was the instructor, he goes, "Yeah, I think it's right." And I said, "No, the colours aren't right." And he goes,
The compass wasn't.
"No, because Tauranga, for some stupid reason, and we're actually only the 6th busiest airport in the country. Nelson's it goes Auckland, Christchurch, Nelson. Nelson has 1.3 million passengers. We have about a third of that. They've got a 1,350 metre runway. We've got 1825 here. The funny thing about it was, Tauranga's never had a VOR. We have an end.
But if you're going to land on 0.
Oh, 2.5. Yeah, I've to land on 2.5. Yeah, but I was going to land on Whangarei Road. Yeah, you're right.
So you went on 2.5.
No, exactly. Compass off, NDV off.
All right, thank you. Look, I'd like to thank all of our 4 presenters tonight. Really entertaining and very interesting. We certainly know a bit more about you now and a bit more of your background, so great, and thank you very much for taking on the task of talking to us about it.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much.
All right. Subsequent events. Our next meeting is on Friday the 2nd of December, and it will be a repeat of the aviation quiz, and this is going to be run by Mel and Kevin.
Yeah.
Last year was the first one, and I think some people were probably a little bit sceptical about how it might go. At the end of the day, it turned out to be a really great night, thoroughly enjoyed by everybody, and it certainly got the...
It's still being talked about.
Yeah, well...
Last year's is still being talked about.
It was certainly entertaining, so keep Friday the 2nd of December available because it's going to be fun.
I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait. I love quiz nights. I love it.
Yeah. And a table by himself.
Yeah.
All right, the end of December, of course, is the end of our financial year, so we have an AGM coming up, and that will be on Friday the 27th of January. So keep that in mind. So, and we'll probably organise it, we'll usually have a barbecue, and we'll certainly organise a speaker of some sort to entertain us. So that's something to look forward to. So after we finish here, supper, get yourself tea or coffee, and there's some cookies there, so help yourself. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so very much, Chet. Love you. Thank you.